Hey team, today we're going to be talking about running aground on your boat, and unfortunately I was spoiled for footage on this particular subject. So as you can see here, a bit of a unique method for getting a boat off of the bank there, but hey, I guess if it works, it works. Just on this note, when you're working with ropes and pulling boats around, be super cautious on the forces that are involved, because if that rope parts or a deck fitting gives and it ricochets off, if it comes into contact with you, it's going to have a bad outcome. Let's just always bear that safety point at the back of our mind when we're dealing with grounded vessels. So first thing is, we should never really run aground on a boat. You should all, in the coastal area anyway, which is charted, you should check your chart and always factor in the tide and know what sort of depth you're operating in. One other point and tip I would give you is, when you're operating in an area that you know is shallow but you have to be there, I actually leave my engine, contrary to what you might think, I like to leave it trimmed down, and that way I know when it starts stirring up sediment, and I'll only do it over sand or mud, not rocks, I'll know that I'm getting shallow, so I'll know that if I do get stuck, I can at least trim the engine up a bit more to back us out, whereas you don't have that option if the engine's already fully trimmed up. Unless, of course, you're putting the boat on the beach, then trim fully up is the correct course of action. Next thing is, big difference to running aground on mud versus rocks. If you run aground on rocks, serious damage to the hull is probably quite likely, so don't go backing the boat off, because the rocks might be what's keeping you afloat. Mud, okay, we do need to inspect the boat for damage, and if it's safe to get out of the boat, and I stress that because always test the seabed when you step out of a boat. Like here, we've got a load of mud. You want to check that with a boat hook to make sure that if you hop into it with 2 feet, you don't get stuck and then the tide come up over you. That'll be pretty tragic. So check that with the boat hook and make sure you're happy to hop in. And then deploy your anchor, but put the anchor upwind, as far upwind as possible, because as the tide comes back in and refloats you, it's going to try and push you further and further up the bank, so the anchor will stop that from happening. Now, if you can, check the hull and check the inside and outside of the hull for any damage. And also, if you've got a boat with shafts, you want to check that the shafts aren't bent, because trying to operate that's going to cause even more damage if you've got bent shafts. Obviously, if you've got an outboard engine, you want to have it trimmed fully up whilst you wait for the tide to come in, and notify the Coast Guard of your predicament when you're there. Don't expect anyone to come to your rescue. They can't really, unless there's a medical emergency on board. I've been tasked before myself to boats who are waving me over, and I'm thinking, well, dude, I've got a boat just like you and I don't want to end up in your situation, so that's not going to happen. Hey, any other points I may have missed? Shout them out in the comments and let us know.